drove into a wet and overcast Daytona International Speedway where we hope to get the 66th running of the Daytona 500 in later today. Throughout the week, we've been collecting stories from all across the garage area. And right now, as we get you ready for the race, we're going to share a few of our favorites.
I'm fired up as a dang fajita coming hot out of the kitchen right now. That's how fired up I am.
The hunger for racing after a long off-season got an appetizer today with Daytona 500 Media Day.
I enjoy the off-season, and some downtime until kind of January 1st comes, and then I get ready to go.
The off-season's great at first. You've just got off a long grind of a year. You get to spend time at home with friends and family. And then about week 3, that bug starts itching again and you want to get back racing.
Media Day is also a chance for the fortunate few to relive a career-defining moment.
When you walk into a room or you have an engagement, when they announce your name, it always ties to Daytona 500 champion. So that always gets said wherever you go, and that's pretty cool.
Twice, 3 times the audience watches this race as any other NASCAR race, right? So you understand the spotlight's on. It's a big event for the manufacturers, your team.
Being known as a Daytona 500 champion, that's not something that'll ever get old. I think it's a very exclusive club. And I don't mean club, but it's a very high accomplishment, and it's something that we all of us, everybody here, is got high on their priority list.
It's amazing to have your name on this trophy over here and everything goes along with it, but if I won just the 500 and not another race, I'm sitting at home, right? Like if I won one race and that was it in the last 9 years, I'm not driving a race car anymore. So did it really change my life? I don't think so.
Some drivers have accomplished everything you could hope to do during a career. They've been Cup Series champions, been to the very top of the sport, but there's one place they haven't been: victory lane after the Daytona 500.
I mean, obviously it means a lot, right? I mean, this is what you run it for. And I've been close a couple times, run second here twice. Had 2 or 3 other really good shots at winning the race, and just didn't work out for us. And whether that's decision making that you look back on, and you study all that stuff, right?
I'm not going to lose sleep at night when my career's done if I haven't won this race, but I, at the same point, know what it would mean to my career and resume if I did win.
Where do you fall in the Super Bowl of NASCAR?
Oh, I hate that comparison. Like nails on a chalkboard to me. That's where I fall.
There are 7 former 500 winners in the field, but only Denny Hamlin and Jimmy Johnson have won multiple times. At Daytona International Speedway, I'm Chris Womack.
The 2024 Daytona 500 is already a sellout, and when you couple that with the success of Full Speed, we are poised to have the most eyes ever on this event.
If anyone tells you that there's no pressure, they're lying to you.
When it comes to behind-the-scenes access, most people consider Netflix the top of the mountain for a number of reasons.
Platforms like Netflix have 250 million subscribers. That's a big number, right? When you think about and NBC, ABC is probably in 80, 90 million homes. So it really opens up the horizons of bringing in new fans.
I thought they did a really good job of just showcasing what we're like. And I thought the drivers did a really good job of being authentic. Netflix isn't really for the stage stuff.
Drivers actually see that as an opportunity.
One thing that I haven't done a good job of is I don't think that I've put myself out there enough for the general public to know who I am, and I think that that's caused me a little bit of backlash because people don't understand the true me, and hopefully that got to show a little bit of who I am.
A lot of the drivers that participated in it a good amount saw a bump in following on social channels, which was really cool. But yeah, a lot of the engagement, or a lot of the feedback I should say, that I've gotten from it's been very positive.
And it's not just the show. It's reaching new markets like Chicago and NASCAR Mexico that's really building the brand with new fans.
This sport is so popular. It's so popular not just nationwide, but also worldwide. And we have to take advantage of that, 100%. There is so many fans following NASCAR in my country, in Mexico, in Brazil, in Argentina, in Colombia. They reach out to me all the time. In Canada as well. And I think that these are huge opportunities for the sport to get wider.
NASCAR Full Speed has not yet been renewed for a second season, but most of the drivers say they are hoping that will happen. At the Daytona International Speedway, I'm Weber.
Webb right back here at Daytona International Speedway. It's a track and even the sport of NASCAR itself built on the backs of legends. And last month, the sport lost one of its biggest legends, Cale Yarborough.
I asked Dad about Cale. He just says he's a badass.
Rough and tumble.
We went at it for a little while.
Yet soft-spoken.
He wasn't a big talker, but when he did talk, everyone listened when Cale had something to say.
A walking contradiction, but no doubt Cale Yarborough was 100% NASCAR.
He's just manhandling the race car. It's what the epitome of the sport was all about and still is.
Many remember his famous altercation with the Allison brothers during the '79 500. It's a piece of history here at Daytona and part of that rugged mystique that made him famous.
Now let me tell the story of a Carolina sun.
I remember his crash where the windshield went flying out of the car at Talladega, and I just couldn't believe that the man survived such a crazy crash.
But more than that, he was a winner. 3 NASCAR titles, 4 Daytona 500 wins, and paving the way for generations to come.
We do need to remember all the sacrifices and the things that they did to make our sport bigger, made it safer for sure, and made our cars a lot faster.
Respecting its past while trying to move it forward is a really big thing for NASCAR, and I think all of our drivers are really bought in on that.
And Cale Yarborough's passing will certainly leave a void in the sport he helped lay the foundation for.
The nature of the Daytona 500 lends itself to chaos, but if you look over the last couple of decades, the best still tend to find their way to the front. Names like Hamlin, Johnson, and Logano. But the past 3 races have been a deviation from the usual suspects.
And I think all the pieces just fell into place.
That description can sum up any Daytona 500 win, whether you've done it 3 times like Denny Hamlin, or if it's the first time you found victory lane in the Cup Series.
I think McDowell's the winner of this race, guys.
He was first to cross the line.
The latter is the case for Michael McDowell, the 2021 winner who started a 3-year streak of upset winners at the Great American Race. He joins a group that includes names like Derek Cope and Michael Waltrip, who got their first win at the season opener.
To me, we weren't a surprise. I understand why it feels like that, and the reason it does is because the magnitude of the race. It's my first win, and I haven't won a lot, I get it. But statistically, I probably have more top 10s in Daytona 500 than most of the field.
The year after, Austin Cindric introduced himself to the Cup Series by becoming just the 2nd driver ever to make his first start at the highest level a win in the Super Bowl of NASCAR.
I would say there's sometimes more parity when you have that first day of school. You know, no one's used to working with each other. There's people in new places, new sponsors, new cars, new rules packages. And the first race is always going to be able to challenge that a little bit differently than maybe the 26th race of the season.
Ricky Stenhouse has won the Daytona 500.
Sometimes the little guys shine brightest on the biggest stage.
But here's the guy that everybody has been chasing, Tiny Lund.
For Tiny Lund in '63, it was all in a name. But Ricky Stenhouse's victory a year ago raised eyebrows because of the size of his one-car JTG Doherty racing team.
The only outlier in those 3 years, I think, is probably Austin Cindric. Because if you look at Ricky Stenhouse, he's won 3 super speedway races. To me, it's not a shock.
I would go with an upset. I think, there's a lot of people that, and fans that really only kind of focus on, the big teams. And, that's part of it.
Ricky Stenhouse Jr.
But just because people can't believe you did it once, it doesn't mean lightning won't strike twice.
No matter what people categorize the win as upset or not, we feel confident in our ability to go out and do it again.
Now, the biggest upset in Daytona history may have been back in 2011 when Trevor Bayne, at just 20 years old, won his first race on the NASCAR Cup Series right here at the Great American Race. At Daytona International Speedway, I'm Chris Womack.
Most people think of Daytona as the birthplace of NASCAR, and it was, with the organization being formed just down A1A, not too far from here at the Streamline Hotel. But it was at another racing mecca where this organization got its teeth. When we think about the origin of NASCAR, we think about moonshiners, the smoky room at the Streamline Hotel where the founders met, and the beach course. But a year after NASCAR was formed, it was here, at the Charlotte Speedway, where the first strictly stock race, which is now what we know as the NASCAR Cup Series, was run. Do you remember that first race, what that experience was like as a kid?
Not a whole lot.
To be truthful, we don't know much about the race, except what has been passed down through legend.
We know what a big deal it was now, but you know, there are very few media accounts of people that were there.
And a finish that featured the first controversy and first disqualification in series history.
Glenn Dunaway was driving a Ford, and in post-race inspection, they found out that there were modifications to the springs in the rear of the car that were not stock. The backstory is, just a few days earlier, this car was being used to transport moonshine. NASCAR disqualified Glenn Dunaway, and that moved second place finisher Jim Roper up to be the winner.
The race would end up being the first true test of the power of NASCAR as a sanctioning body, and to set the foundation for the structure we have today.
It was pivotal in our history because the owner of Dunaway's car sued Bill France, and a judge ruled that Bill France had the right to set the rules and establish guidelines for racing, and he upheld the disqualification.
And Dunaway was not the only one to go home from the track unhappy. Back then, you drove the same car to the race that you raced. And if you wrecked,
my dad turned the thing over, and we had to thumb a ride with my uncle to get back home. I do remember that part of it.
Jim Roper, who won that first race in Charlotte, actually thought so little of NASCAR that he went back home to Kansas and returned to racing modifieds. And Richard Petty told me that no one at the time really understood just what NASCAR could become. At the Daytona International Speedway, I'm Heather Williams.
The first 2 years of the next-gen era have been a mixed bag for the big three teams, but Joe Gibbs Racing has still managed to find victory lane 14 times during that stretch. Leading the way among the big dogs is Hendrick Motorsports, who has 21 first place finishes. Now, Team Penske is lagging behind in the win department, but they do have the last 2 series championships.
If we had it our way, right, you want to run how we ran the playoffs all year, right? But it just doesn't work like that. You know, you find things throughout the year that help you. Other teams find things that are better than you, and you have to figure out, okay, how do we get better again, right? It's a super hard sport, right? Little things mean so much, and it's hard to find those little things.
I really would wish we were good all the time, but pretty impressed, proud of them. Everyone just kept digging, right? I mean, I think what happens is the expectation of victory from our boss is real, and when you realize things aren't where they need to be, things change pretty quickly.
2024 is off to a good start for Penske, though. Joey Logano won the pole for the Daytona 500 and will lead the field to green on Sunday. At Daytona International Speedway, I'm Chris Womack.
Few athletes are instantly recognized by one name. Even fewer by one article of clothing. But then again, few are at the level of Richard Petty.
There's athletes in certain sports that do transcend, but you take them out of that context and people recognize them still, and that's the way he is.
He changed the sport not only in the generation when he was most successful, but every generation after.
Nicknamed the King by the media in the mid-60s,
I'd rather be called that and a lot of other things.
Petty and his family have been a part of the sport since its inception, with his father running the first NASCAR race 75 years ago.
I went to the very first race, Cup race that NASCAR had in 1949.
The Petty family accomplishments since then read like a guide to the biggest races and the biggest moments in the sport.
Some of his records that he has made, they're never going to be touched because of the amount of races we run, because of where we're at in the sport.
But for the King and his Petty court, the legacy is about so much more than what Richard has done on the track.
I did nothing by myself. There was always my dad or my brother, Dale Inman, our crew chief. I had the family around you, but then you had all these people that worked for us over the years. They're the ones that made it work.
It says 75 years of racing, you know what I mean? But I think when you look back, it's also 75 years of family.
Petty says the biggest legacy his family will leave behind is the Victory Junction Gang Camp. That's a camp for children with various illnesses. It was created in honor of Kyle's son Adam, who was killed in a crash in New Hampshire in 2000. At the Daytona International Speedway, I'm Heather Williams. I'm so happy now to be joined by Jamie Little from NASCAR on Fox. All right. I know this is an exciting day for the drivers, but for media people, how exciting is it to be back here in Daytona ready to start another year?
It's incredible. No matter how many of these you get to cover, just coming back, driving through the tunnel just now, and then seeing all the drivers, all the fresh fire suits and the fresh driving shoes, like everybody's excited. It's the first day of school and it's the biggest race. So there's a lot of eyeballs on our sport right now. So as a broadcaster, you're lucky that you get to be the one telling the stories when it comes to race time on Sunday.
So what stories will you be watching for? What's kind of the big storylines heading into Daytona?
I think there's so many. The storylines that I always like to look at are the guys who so far are winless in many attempts at trying to win this race. Kyle Busch, who's done everything. He's a champion, a two-time champion, never been able to win the Daytona 500. Martin Truex Jr., Kyle Larson, a champion. Some call him the best of our generation as a talent, and he's never been able to win here or any super speedway race. And then on the flip side, you have the young guys like Carson Hocevar and Zane Smith. What can they do for the first time at this level? Nothing like coming into your rookie year, biggest race of the year, all the eyes on you, all the questions. So I love to see how the young kids, who so many believe in, how they'll fare on Sunday.
You mentioned the young kids. It feels like that this sport is kind of in maybe the last couple of years a little bit of a transition period. Is this kind of, are we seeing the next great superstars now kind of come in? I mean, we already have some of them like Chase Elliott and Ryan Blaney, who are young, who've already won championships. But do you feel like the wave, the changing of the guard?
For sure. It's been happening for a few years now. I mean, Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr., they're like the old guard now. You know, Kyle Busch is getting up there. He's not even 40 yet. But we have so many of these young kids. Kevin Harvick now joining NASCAR on Fox. So he was like the lone oldest veteran out there. But it's been a movement, I think, for these young kids. But it's younger than NASCAR's ever been. You know, back in the day, guys would come into this sport at 30 years old. Now they're coming in at 18. 18 years old, you can run every track, jump in and go. Ty Gibbs, we saw do that. And I think it's fun. It's a great time in our sport, these young, eager drivers, but they started racing at 3 and 4 years old, so they're tremendous talents. And now is the time to like sink your teeth into it. Who's your driver? Who do you want to root for? William Byron is a perfect example of somebody new, fresh, capable of winning. He was incredible last year, had the best pit crew. I think he was probably the best car most of the season. He's another young talent that a lot of people are looking at.
So you've called this race a bunch from pit road. There have been so many, it seems like recently, kind of underdog stories, maybe upset stories. Do you have a favorite like upset call or underdog story that you've called, or something that sticks out in your mind?
Gosh, I love first-time winners, you know, getting that breakthrough win. Michael McDowell just a couple years ago. What a story. Oh, my gosh, this guy has dedicated his life to this sport and been in it for so long trying to get that win. And then you come out and win the biggest race of your life. Austin Cindric, he comes out last year. It's his kickoff, it was 2 years ago. He comes out, he's a rookie, comes to Daytona. His dad, his family has been in racing forever, IndyCar, and this is all he's ever wanted to do, and he comes out and wins right out of the box. And just those moments as a pit reporter when you're standing on that start-finish line and you're interviewing these winners, and the tears and the emotion and the weight of the world coming off their shoulders, there's nothing like that.
So you're making history yourself, now calling ARCA races. What's that been like for you? There are so many young girls that get to look up to you and what you do in this sport.
Absolutely. It's about time, right? I mean, racing's been around forever. And yes, in 2001, I started covering the ARCA Menard series, and no woman has done that. And that's different. You know, it takes people time to change. Like, you're not hearing a male voice, you're hearing a female voice. But this is my 25th year of covering motorsports. So, you know, I jumped into that role, and it was a lot of hard work. And now I'm doing the truck series. I'll do more than half of those this year. And I feel like it's a responsibility. There's so many, like you said, young girls, young men that come in and they're like, if you can do this and climb the ladder and work your way up, then I can. And that's what it's all about. And it's showing producers out there, if you give people a chance that deserve it, they might surprise you. And I hope that this opens up some doors for those.
I really appreciate the time that you gave us, and make sure you check out Jamie not only on the call for the Daytona 500, but throughout the year in both the Cup Series and the Truck Series. Thanks for joining us for this preview of the Daytona 500. Don't forget you can watch the race whenever we run it on your local Fox affiliate. At the Daytona International Speedway, I'm Heather Williams. Enjoy the race.